Hello everyone and welcome back to What Do I Know? In this series of videos, there's going to be 4 of them, we're going to be dealing with the findings in the finances and accounts. Now, the period of time is going to run from 2015 to 2019. That was the 4 years before yours truly was elected as councillor and then was duly elected and appointed as Chair of Finance. The reason why I'm doing this is I believe firmly is there are things that people need to know and they don't know. There are things that we know and we have known for some time, and now is the right time to let the cat out of the bag. These were the finance issues that I drew to the attention of the police. Unfortunately, whilst working with the police, the then monitoring officer of Cheshire East took it upon himself to interfere and shut down this investigation. That was completely illegal. You can't do that, but he seemed to think he could do it, and at the minute he's got away with it. I was personally very disappointed that that happened. So I'm going to go through each set of investigations in a separate video. So we're going to have a video for 2015, 2016, 2016, 2017, 2017, 2018, and 2018, 2019. And in 2019 will take you up to the election and not beyond. Because of course, after that time, we got a proper Chair of Finance. Me. He knew what he was doing. In a nutshell, I undertook this investigation within months. I started it inside months, not even months, weeks of becoming the Chair of Finance. Because I knew prior to that, from the taste that I got back in September 2016, that quite simply put, things were not right. And our attempts to get them addressed by auditors had been thwarted by the mob. Now, what this resulted in was a series of spreadsheets and a report. And I'm going to work through those spreadsheets and report. But this video is 2015 and 2016. Now, as you'll find, something very important happened during this particular financial year. And things were happening during that period of time that should not have been happening. So where do we begin? Well, what we'll do is we'll look at the spreadsheet first. And the first spreadsheet is 2015, 2016. And at the time, I put that together with former councillor Mike Thompson. And everything was roundly checked against documentation available as provided by both clerks. Because you're going to find we ended up changing clerks during this particular period of time. So, with that said, here we go. Going straight from the report, this period takes in May 2015 to April 2016 inclusively. This report will note occurrences and happenings which have occurred in this period and which are highly questionable, possibly unlawful, or potential breach of the Code of Conduct. The report will note what has been looked at and record what is required. Now, this was at the time. We have since got the what is required. Points of interest will also be noted. Documents that we've analysed in this period were the order of payment accounts for the following months: May 2015, June 2015, July 2015, September 2015, October 2015, January 2016, February 2016, March 2016 and April 2016. You'll notice that December and November 2015 are missing there. No longer are they missing. We have those and we've been able to analyse those. We've also analysed petty cash accounts for all that period of time. Now, on the spreadsheet for this particular year, there was a lot of things that we did actually notice. So, where do we begin? And how do we begin? Well, it all began back looking at things. We go as far back as July 2015. And the first thing that we picked up was in the middle of July that year, there was a payment of 18 quid to the clerk for mileage. The clerk travelled to Knutsford. However, what should be in the accounts is why is the clerk gone to Knutsford? What was the purpose of the trip? And why is this mileage being claimed back? And there should also be the calculation to make sure that it is right. None of that was in the accounts. Why? You can't have your accounts without that in. Let's get that straight. Because this is not personal money, this is public money we're talking about. This is ratepayers' money. So already we're seeing problems. Also in July, and this is one of the major things we we picked up on, there was expenditure of £25.98 for jerry cans and food containers. And it was a petty cash payment. But there was no note as to say, or explanation to say who they were for and what they were for and where they were. Because we looked at the inventory and none of those were there. Now, just so as you know, the chair of the council at this time was one Cynthia Sampson, the vice chair was one John Smith, and the chair of finance was John Smith. So, one of the things we did notice in July 2015 is it was claimed it was paid out of petty cash, but there was no record of it in the petty cash account. So, we've got accounting here that's quite simply not right. We then get a petty cash expenditure of 95p for first class postage that's there but has not been recorded. So what that means is the petty cash figure is wrong, already wrong. It's 95p out. All right, you might think that's not a big error, but these are public finances. You can't make errors like that. Every penny, every pound has to be accounted for, no matter how big or small the amount. It's not happening. Automatically we can see it's not happening. We then get, again, and this is in July, we get a petty cash expenditure of 17 quid from the chairs fund. So that already we're crossing purposes. Is it petty cash or chairs fund for tombola prizes? Right. Now, we then find out at the time we had 2 paddock fairs in Hanforth. Okay, during August 2015. This payment went out in July 2015. We noticed that there was a certain stall, and I'm not going to name the stall, but it had a tombola. There are 2 stores and there's tombola on both. Now, the question that rose here was, is this evidence of there being a vested and undeclared interest? Certainly on behalf of the then chair, one Councillor Sampson, Cynthia. We decided we needed to find out if the clerk can confirm where this particular tombola was held. The clerk confirmed that it was the 2 tombolas that were in the paddock fair in August of 2015 with this particular entity. So automatically we knew there was a vested interest. We then see as well in July a sum of money was paid out for chout training, but there is no value recorded at all. There was no confirmation that these training sessions were actually attended and by who. So we did actually ask the clerk to see if they had been attended. Now, unfortunately, as you're going to find, when we were doing this, we have a different clerk. The original clerk has gone, and now we've got Ashley. We couldn't get a thing out of Ashley. He wouldn't investigate this. So a lot of this is why we were saying there's something not right here. We then also see, in this month, a payment for a hanging basket of £283.20 has been made. Now, we noticed that it's been made to ANZA. ANZA's part of Cheshire East, or at least was. I mean, it's now been expunged. It's now totally been swallowed up into Cheshire East, so there's no ANZA around. Yeah. Now, at this time, we don't recall seeing any hanging baskets around the village. And we also needed to know, as this payment's been made to ANZA, who owns these hanging baskets? Where are these hanging baskets? And if they have been put up, when were they put up? The other thing we found as well was, regards this payment, There'd been no discussion about making this payment either at Finance Committee or at full council. So why was this payment even made? Simply put, it shouldn't have been made. Certainly not without full council, at least full council knowing. Now we have two entries here now for a very large BACS transfer of £12,500. Okay. Now, this was made by BACS transfer. So, for those of you who don't know, when you make a BACS transfer, you're going to have the BACS transfer documentation showing the transfer, which details your account, the amount, the account it's going to, and the names on each account. You also have to have what is known as a BACS transfer certificate, which confirms that. Now, anybody who says, "Oh no, you don't," I'm very lucky here because my partner, bless her, she's not just a chartered accountant like her father and like her brother. She's also an auditor. Okay? And I'll say this, she carries out audits. And so that people want to know, she carries out audits to the extent these are things that go before tribunals and courts as evidence. Okay? Well, that's all I'm going to say on that. This, when you get that kind of knowledge and you get that kind of help, it's a win-win for you. I had that. What I can't understand is how on earth such a sizable BACS transfer has been allowed to stand. Yeah. How it's been allowed to stand without incorrect documentation, and the recording of such is completely wrong. What I will say is the entity to which it went to, the mob had a vested interest in, a big one. We then jump to September 2015, nothing in August, and we find that the petty cash figure is wrong. There's postage of an audit at a cost of £132.82 has not been recorded, so the petty cash account figure is wrong. Again, we have to ask the question, how has this error been allowed to stand? And if we're doing a proper audit, how has it been missed? If I've picked it up straight away, and I'm not an auditor, I'm not an accountant, I'm a solicitor, for heaven's sake, professional investigator. If I've picked it up, how has nobody else? And how has this error been made at source straight at the beginning? Further in September, we have a fun size club. Now I'm all for fun size clubs giving kids and youth something to do. There's petty cash expenditure with a figure of £232. Okay, this now takes the expenditure of the fun size club to £659.92. Now you're probably saying, what's the big wow with that? Well, I'm going to tell you what the big wow is. Back in July, in the Irish Council, full council meeting in July, agenda item 15.15.12, it was to consider the expenditure of up to £570 on activities for children aged between 7 to 11. This is amended to 7 to 12 in the September 2015 meeting. £570 up to £570. That means not over it. So we've now got a total expenditure of £659.92. That is an overspend of £89.20. This should have come back to council. In the accounts when we were going through this, we noted there was a note signed by the former caretaker of Hanforth Youth Centre. Notice I call it Youth Centre, not Youth Community Centre. Proper name, Youth Centre. And the then clerk for £150. Attached to this were receipts that appeared to cover this. But what about the other £82? There's another £82. You've got £232 that's gone out, and you've only accounted for 150. Where's the other 82? Who's got it? What was done with that £82? Again, we couldn't get an explanation. Nobody knew. But how has this passed audit? How has this even passed council? How was this missed? Or as we started asking questions, were councillors aware of this? Were they being given correct figures? Still in September, we noticed there's a transfer to our local scout group. Great scout group. However, again, the backs, there's no receipt or certificate noting full details and accounts. Again, how has this error been made? Again, this is unacceptable accounting procedure. Now, in September 2015, we get a situation where there's an attempt to transfer 75,000 quid to Nationwide bank account. This is recorded in the order accounts for payment. Well, that's wrong, because in the accounts this is crossed out as this doesn't happen. Okay, this didn't go ahead, so this raised 3 points. The order of payment of accounts are wrong, but still got approved on the 8th of September 2015. How? How could this have been approved with such an error? And who put that order of payment of accounts there with that error, in the full knowledge that that was wrong? 2. From checking the published minutes of HPC meetings, there has been no attempt to correct this error. And thirdly, the clerk, the chair, the vice chair and chair of finance have permitted an erroneous set of accounts to be ratified and approved. That is in itself the complete definition of misconduct in public office. One other important point arises here. This is £75,000 that we were going to transfer to a savings account at Nationwide Building Society. I garnered some advice from the local government association, made it very clear to me Parish Council could not have a savings account. They have reserves in its account, but not a savings account per se. So, this raised one other point. There does not seem to be any reference to this being discussed, debated and approved at Finance Committee and or full Council. Why? This can't just be done because of the amount of money involved. It's 75,000 quid. It's a huge amount of money, right? So why is this going ahead without it coming to Finance Committee and or full Council? Like, it'd have to go to both and full Council because of its value. To me, all councillors at that time should have been involved, and there is no evidence that this happened. It was going to happen, or it would even happen. There was an attempt just to do this. Now that to me is very, very serious, and that was a big red flag for me. We then move into October of 2015 and we get a deposit paid for our pantomime. I don't have a problem with paying the deposit for the pantomime. It seems to be a very popular thing in the community, and I say long may it run, so long as it's successful. Yeah, I noted the agenda item of 15, 19, 11 to approve the expenditure of up to £1,700 of Christmas pantomime for children aged 3 to 12 years. I don't have a problem with that. What I do have a problem with is that the invoice, rather than being addressed to either the clerk of Hanford Parish Council, or Chair of Finance, or the Chair, or the Council per se, is actually drafted to the then caretaker of the youth centre. Why? Now, I've noted there's the contract here. If you make a mistake in the drafting of a contract, you could potentially render it void. There would have to be a complete legal breakdown looking at it, and to avoid it being rendered void, okay, you need to agree an amendment. Okay, and that amendment has to be attached to the contract itself, the original contract with the error crossed out, and obviously a new one attached, and a note, memorandum, noting what the error was, what the agreement was to amend it, and now it's been amended, and here is the new contract. What we ended up asking the question of, we could not get an explanation to this, is why is the caretaker seemingly acting as an agent for HPC? Is that caretaker at the time, was that caretaker, I should say at the time, an agent for HPC? If so, where and from whom did such an authority come? Of course, we had to email Ashley, he had no idea where to look, and we never got any answers to this again. So we've got somebody who seemingly is acting as an agent for council, right? And shouldn't be. Who said that person could? Again, explanation's gone begging. We then get again in October, the petty cash figure is wrong. Yeah, the figures quite clearly show it should be £600, but it's recorded as £500. I think I now know why that figure was potentially recorded as being wrong and £100 less than it was, because petty cash should not have more than £500 in. So the figure saying it should be 600 quid, would have shown there's too much money in petty cash. So cutting it down, somebody's done some creative accountancy there, albeit a bit dishonest, and it's not told the truth. October 2015, we also get an invoice from Cheshire East, the full size club at a cost of £427.92. The invoice is not clear as to what the charge is for, but yet we've paid out this invoice. So going back to consider expenditure July 15, 15, 12 of up to 570 quid, we now got this invoice of £427.92. This is considerably more than 570 quid, because we've got, on top of that, payments of 232.96 and 150 quid not properly accounted for. We don't know whether the 500 quid in petty cash has covered these payments. We don't know. What we do know is there's roughly, on this fund size club now, we're roughly looking at just under 1,000 quid that's gone out. So we're well over the 570 quid that we said we were not going to pass. We're not, the total we were not going to surpass. The last one in October is a payment for a planning seminar. And 2 councillors go to that, cost of 80 quid. But there's no confirmation in there that those councillors actually attended it. So if we paid out and they've not attended, we don't know. We had no way of knowing. So again, another major problem in the accounts. We move into November and we find there's Christmas lights that have been bought. We don't know who's actioned it. Yeah. We note agenda item 1523.8 from November 2015, which suspends 6k as opposed to 3k, and it was resolved unanimously. Unanimously, yeah. 3 sets of Christmas lights were actually bought here at a cost of £433.93, £365.62 and £159.77. That's a total cost of £959.32. We looked at the dates that these Christmas lights were actually bought, and they were bought before that agenda item came up in November, and they were bought before the ratification of the decision in December 2015. Now, for those of you who don't know, if you're going to spend money, you cannot spend that money on the council until your minutes and your decisions have been ratified. You can't pass it at council and suddenly say, oh, we're going to go and spend the money. No, you can't do that. No. It gets better. In November, we noticed we had CPR sessions in the village. Now, I'm all for CPR. I know my CPR, inside out, back to front, upside down. It's an incredible skill to have, and you may well save a life. You may well give somebody a second chance at life. There was in September an agenda item 15.19.12, a motion to approve the expenditure of up to £1,000 in CPR training for Handforth residents. There were 2 sessions paid for at a cost of £92.40 each. However, we note that HPC at this time bought a banner. But back in September, the minutes note that Councillor Smith stated that as interest in the CPR sessions was high, which it was, that it would be unnecessary to spend money on advertising. So a series of questions arose. 1, why has this banner been bought? 2, where is the banner? Right? As there seems to be a claim for, and it's not just a claim by Councillor Smith, he has claimed expenses for his wife, as you will find out, who gave Councillor Smith authority to claim expenses for it. So this is what we noted. This is what we noted. There was an invoice on the accounts, and that invoice was in his wife's name. Not his, in her name. She created the banner, yeah, albeit online, but had paid for it and given the invoice to council. Now, as you're going to find, John Smith claimed that he paid for it on his credit card. Now, if that's the case, what should be on that invoice is credit card number and the name on the credit card. There was nothing of the sort. No. Nothing of the sort. Now, we will come back to that. We then again have a pantomime invoice at cost of £1,432.80. The original quote was £1,672.80. My question here that arose is why was there a difference in quotes? What changed? Was it, we looked at the deposit that was paid, and the difference between the actual quote and what was paid didn't match the deposit. So why was there a difference in quotes? What changed? And if there was something changing and the quote was changing, that had to come back to council. Again, it didn't. So we've got another something that's going on financially that seemingly has been hidden away from all members of council and the public. We then have another payment for child training, 90 quid. Did those councillors who claimed that they went, did they go? We don't know. Probably did. We don't know. But that's the kind of thing that should be recorded. It should have been recorded. The attendance is there. There should be an attendance slip. All of that. Signed by council. Name printed. There was nothing of the sort. So again, we've got a payment going out. But did those councillors attend? We move into December 2015. And we note the claim for expenses by Councillor Smith. One, he's claimed £18 and 6 for the banner, and then he's claimed £21.60 for mileage to Sandbach for training. Right. Okay, I'm going to move to the next one, because it's the claim for the banner, which is we didn't know whether or not there'd been any training in Sandbach. When we contacted CEC, they said, what training? So we don't know what training it was. No idea. However, we have got this invoice. There's this invoice for the printing of the banner. It's made out to John Smith's wife, Julie. John Smith claims back the banner despite September saying we don't need to spend on advertising. Number one, we didn't even know where the banner was. HPC technically owns it, and we should be in possession of it. We weren't. I don't know if we've got that banner back. I don't know. Didn't know back then. Don't know now. Through December, we start seeing all kinds of weird and wonderful expenditure. We buy 2 timers. We don't know who's actioned them. But were bought at a cost, one at £79.60 and one at £55.72. We noticed that the latter price was refunded, but inaccurately recorded in the petty cash list. This has got to be corrected. So again, we've got a wrong account. We have fridge magnets bought at a cost of £13.94. Why the hell is Anfield Parish Council buying fridge magnets when we don't own a fridge, or didn't at the time? So why were these bought? Who were they bought for, by who, and for what purpose, and where are they? We don't know. We noticed as well in December 2015, a new Union flag's bought at a cost of £8.96. Who authorised this? There's nothing about this appears on the agenda, and it should. We need to know, at the time we needed to know, does HPC have possession of it? If not, who has it? And again, it was something else we could not get answers to. It was hidden away from us. So we've got £8.96 going out of public money. Nobody knows where the article is. You know, technically it's owned by HPC. We noticed as well, again, the petty cash figure was incorrect. So wrong finances there. We then noticed there's been spectacular fireworks bought. 10 set pieces. Then we noticed that. Okay. We notice, yeah, we know November 15, agenda item 1523A, to spend £6,000 as opposed to £3,000 Christmas lights and decorations. Yes, we used to have mini trees that went along through the village, and they look great with the lights on them. We don't do that anymore. Yeah. In December as well, we find that there was a cheque at a value for £400 that's replaced by another cheque in favour of Wilmslow Town Council. There is no record as to what that money was used for, or paid to, or whom. Investigation revealed nothing. We could not get to the bottom of it. It's something else that's gone on. It's £400 that's gone out. Couldn't find out why. Again, hidden away. We have in December again another hanging basket payment. But there are no hanging baskets in the village. So we had to contact Anza, and Anza went, news to us. What hanging baskets? I said, well, you've been paid for them. You've been paid for them. We don't know of any hanging baskets. This is December 2015. We then get, and the final part of December 2015 is Councillor Smith, his chair of finance, authorised an interim petty cash payment of £500, the 25th of November 2015. Who gave him authorisation to do that? Because I know for a fact that if I was going to do that, I would have to do a special note to all the members of the Finance Committee and say this is going to go through as a motion. Finance Committee saying this is what it's for, had to do it, this is when we do it. But again, we looked at the minutes of Finance Committee meetings and there was nothing there. We wasn't even on full council. There was nothing there. So what was that £500 for? Yeah. We need to know if it was a petty cash payment, who authorised him? Who was it paid to? Where was it paid to? What was it paid for? And how was it spent? And again, that should be in the accounts, and it wasn't. We got a February now of 2016, and it gets better. We have a petty cash payment of £17.66. We don't know who it's actioned by, we don't know what it's for, but we need to see a petty cash breakdown. We see a petty cash breakdown, and lo and behold, that payment, even though it's gone out, it's recorded as going out as petty cash, is not recorded in petty cash. Okay, now we get to March. Now, beginning of March, okay, the clerk resigns. Okay, he resigns. It's quite sad. All I'm going to say is, I quite like that clerk. I thought he was a really decent guy, and I was sorry to see him go. But what we get in March 2016 is we get another deposit of £240 paid for our next pantomime. Don't have a problem with pantomime. But why is the invoice going to the then caretaker of Hanforth Youth Centre? It's addressed to that person, and then the next line is Hanforth Parish Council. So is this person again acting as an agent for HPC? If so, who authorised it? And such authorisation has to go through full council. £240 has been paid from an invoice that's been made out to somebody who's not part or to do with Hanforth Parish Council, but it's been paid out. That can't happen. That is a misuse of public funds, or incorrect use of public funds. Now, I'll go to the report. In April 2016, we're right at the end here now, the petty cash account, in the petty cash account, there's a cash payment of £550 to Oakmere for room hire. What is this for? Was the council at that time putting on a function in Oakmere and needs to pay to hire a room? And this should have been evidenced in minutes. There's nothing mentioned in any set of minutes, whether Finance Committee or full council, but £50 paid out to Oakmere for room hire. So again, why? What's going on? What is really going on? What's the big idea? I'm going to conclude with this. In December of 2016, former Councillor Mike Thompson quite correctly placed the following agenda on the agenda for full council. Agenda item 1635.12, motion. to consider writing to the auditors, at the time external auditors with BDO, to request an explanation on a number of points regarding the 15-16 accounts as raised by Councillor Thompson. Councillor Sampson, she proposed it, was seconded by Councillor Thompson to contact the Council's auditors with a note to say the accounts had been given a clean bill of health. However, the Council would like to clarify a number of points and was aware of the cost implication of doing this. That motion was carried 5 for and 2 against. Cynthia Sampson voted for it, as did Brian, as did Mike, as did Ian, and one other councillor. So it was agreed that a letter be sent to BDO for what effectively would have been a governance audit. I'm going to tell you straight right now that one of those councillors voting against the motion was the Chair of Finance, one John Smith. If you've got a clear conscience, if you know that everything's all right there, why vote against it? What have you got to hide? What are you worried about? So fast forward to February 2017, we get agenda item 170610 on the full council meeting. Motion to accept the report from the auditor regarding item 163512 of the December 1326 meetings. This was proposed by Councillor Sullivan and seconded by Councillor Smith that the auditor's report was accepted. Motion carried 4 on 1. Abstention. Councillor Thompson abstained but does not have to cite a reason. The clerk noted a recommendation from the auditor that as the council's expenditure increased, it will be good practice for the council to have the auditor perform an interim audit each year. Well, that should have been going on in any event. It should have been going on in any event, but there's one of several things that jump out here. Of that motion's illegal because no councillor puts their name to that motion, so it can't be debated. Yeah, we get it proposed and seconded. I have video evidence from that meeting where John Smith declared that he and the council had been exonerated from any wrongdoing. Now, that statement stuck with me and it stuck with me for a while, and I can now prove that statement was misleading. At the time, and in pursuance of my theory believing it was misleading, I presented an FOI request to the clerk that was made on the 14th of February 2019. I received a response from the clerk on the 4th of March 2019. I noted an email was missing, and this was then supplied to me on the 6th of March 2019. I noted from the communication bundle that the letter which should have been sent to BDO was never sent. The only letter which was sent was to our internal auditors. This left me with a great deal of suspicion and suspecting the following. 1. That the agreed motion was not followed at all and the wish of council was ignored. Why? 2. Was this part of a cover-up? If so, why and for what purpose? 3. Was the clerk bullied into only sending a letter to the internal auditor, and if so, why? To all of us from our side, what this boiled down to is the anomalies has been found by myself and ratified and confirmed by Mike and Brian were never made subject to a formal governance audit. Therefore, the statement that Smith made is beyond reasonable doubt another lie which is used to mislead the public and place more questions at the doors of Mike and Brian. Mike and Brian did no wrong. I did no wrong. I picked up on one particular paragraph in John Smith's diatribe I previously outed to you from April 2017, in which he said the following. He was going to read this passage, but Cynthia Sampson stopped him dead, so he couldn't finish reading this passage. This passage is entitled Financial Irregularities, and he reads thus. Recently, Councillor Thompson presented a dozen or so items which he felt were evidence of incorrect financial management, which would be the responsibility of myself as chair of the Finance Committee. These were produced by a member of the public. As many will be aware, once these areas in financial management were brought to light, Councillor Thompson was in favour of instructing the Specialist Parish Council Auditor to recheck their incorrect audit. Well, he's not worded that properly. That's not the case. For those not aware, the auditor found no fault with any of the items raised by the member of the public, well, because it was never looked at. So that's a lie. That in itself, that is a complete dishonest statement. It's a misleading statement. So a comment was made on one item which referred to the purchase of a banner to identify the premises where HPC-backed CPR instruction will be taking place. This was not a comment made by the auditors, it was a comment that we made. he stated that members of the public should not order goods on behalf of the council. And he goes on and says, what he wasn't aware was that the member of the public created the design online on the supplier's website. I then ordered and paid for the banner with my own bank card and subsequently reclaimed the cost through normal procedure of petty cash from parish clerk. Wrong. You didn't. You lied. Again, that invoice was made out in John Smith's wife's name. If he's paid it by card, that invoice has to record the card number and the name on the card, so we know. And if he's reclaiming it, it can't go through petty cash. It's got to go through a recorded BACS transfer and a proper repayment transfer with certificates and everything signed off by the clerk, signed by him and witnesses. That didn't happen. So what went on here was totally and utterly unlawful, hence why it was raised. He goes on and says, an extra cost to HPC was incurred for the pointless re-audit which vindicated me. No, it didn't vindicate him. It didn't vindicate him. There was no such vindication. He's lying again. He's lied again. I'll finish it off. It would be expected that as the next chair of the Finance Committee, Councillor Thompson would have checked the member of the public's work and realised that the accusations were baseless. Well, here's the news flash. He did check the member of the public's work. It was my work, and realised they weren't baseless. Because if there wasn't proper concrete findings on it, with the notes that I took, you've got to bear in mind what I do for a living. Do you think I'd just write a couple of one-liners on a piece of paper? No. I came back from that accounts check with a bundle of paper nearly 25 pages thick in notes. So to say that the accusations were baseless is a shambolic, childish and juvenile attempt to try and defend. And it failed. Again, and I will conclude with this, the highlighted passage clearly shows he intended to mislead again. The letter was not sent to the correct auditor as agreed by the council. I also think, in what he stated there, I think he does make a foolish admission regards misuse of public funds. I'll leave that with you now and let you think about what I've said. But that's 2015-2016, and that's what we found in the accounts. Stay tuned. 2016-2017 is just around the corner. Thanks.